In this video, I want to draw a plot of a curve, and I also want to emphasize a specific point on that curve. So drawing the curve, it's going to be using plot. And the curve I want to draw is x squared minus 2, and let's do it for x from 0 to 4. There we go. And the point that I want to emphasize is this one here, the one where it crosses the x-axis in the range I drew. So it's like I want to solve x squared minus 2 equals 0. So x is going to be square root of 2. And what's the y-coordinate going to be? Well, it's on the x-axis, so the y-coordinate is 0. How do I draw that point? I'm going to use graphics. Before we saw using graphics with disk and with circle and with triangle. Here we're going to use another keyword that's called point. And the way you do it is you just write point and square brackets, and then in a list you put the coordinates of the point. So in this case it would be square root, which you spell like this, capital S-Q-R-T, square root of 2, and the y-coordinate is 0. And if I want to draw this, then I put it inside of graphics. So here's the curve that I wanted to draw. Here is the point that I wanted to plot, and somehow I want to combine these two. And we saw how to combine a bunch of different disks just by putting them all in a list, and it's not quite that easy in this case. In this case, the reason it's not as easy is because one of them uses this keyword graphics, and the other one is something that's a little different. It uses the keyword plot. So to combine both of those at the same time, like to draw them one overlapping the other, I'm going to use a keyword called show. So let me show you an example of it. Let me name this plot, and it's not obvious that you can name a plot a variable name, but in Mathematica you can. So let me call it my plot, and let me suppress the output with a semicolon. And let me do the exact same thing here. Let me call this my point. And now if I want to show both of these, it's pretty easy, as long as you know to use the keyword show. So I do show, and then it would be very reasonable to think these have to be in a list, but they don't. I can just write one then the other. So I can just write my plot, my point. I didn't have to put them in a list. I didn't have to do curly braces around them. And there you go. Here is the plot that we can see pretty easily, and here is the point that we can't see too easily. So how can I make this point a little bit bigger? Well, one way to do it is inside this graphics up here. I can make a little list, and before the point, it wouldn't work if I did it after the point. I can say point size and then some number. 0.1 works. And then I have to close off the list. So now inside of graphics, instead of just having point, now I have a little list. And what's the list? The first list element is this option for the point size. 0.1 stands for what's the proportion of the total width that I want to take up. And the second item in the list, that's the graphics object, that's the point. So make sure you evaluate it so that my point changes to this new definition. There, I've evaluated it. And now let's do this show command again. And there you can see that it's quite a bit bigger than it was before. If I want to specify a bigger range, I can do that at the end of show. For example, I can say plot range, how about x from -5 to 5? And for the y, let's do something different from what we've done before. Let's tell Mathematica to just choose the y range automatically. So notice that even though now I'm going from -5 to 5, this still just goes from 0 to 4 because that's what I typed up here. So if I want to change this to -5 to 5, I can. And I evaluate it again. Now if I evaluate this show again, and now I get a new width of it. And if I wanted to have a smaller point size, I could do, for example, 0.05. And then evaluate the show again. And now that's half the size that it was before. I could have also done this all at once, but it definitely wouldn't have been as easy to read. So instead of using the variable name myPlot, I could have just typed out the whole expression, this whole plot expression. And instead of using the variable name myPoint, I could have typed out this whole expression. So let me just copy and paste it over here. Okay, now I can evaluate it again, and it looks exactly the same. So in some ways, this is nicer because if I want to change the width, for example, say I want to change this to 0.2, so I want to have a huge point, then I just had to evaluate once. I didn't have to both change it up here and then also change it down here. But on the other hand, if you just look at this, it's a lot harder to tell what's going on than it was before when we were breaking it up using these variable names.